Okay, what is up, everybody? So I'll give it the customary moment for people to join us in person if they'd like, and during that, I'm gonna mute myself really quick while I finish my Subway sandwich. This video is not brought to you by Subway, but maybe they'll sponsor me. Who knows? Okay, I think we've got our usual crew of attendees. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, I think so. Um, all right. Well, anyway, let's get into it today. So we are going through, and I'm gonna put this on my other screen. Let's see, and nice. All right, so we're going through section 1.4. So section 1.4 is all about continuous functions, which is probably one of the most important concepts. I would even say potentially in all of mathematics. Continuous functions, they're a big old deal, right? They appear pretty much everywhere. They appear in calculus, all types of analysis. I shouldn't even list the places that continuous functions appear. They're pretty much everywhere. They're ubiquitous in mathematics. I'm going to deviate today, though, from how the book presents this material because I think it's actually a little bit easier if we just go for a good old-fashioned straight-up approach that actually starts with a definition of a topological space as a very general object. And so I think this is something that too many books shy away from because the formalism is supposed to scare you or something. And I don't really think it does. So a topological space, and I guess this is also a definition of a topology. So a topology on a set, and we'll just call this set, I'll call it capital X, is a collection tau of subsets of X. We'll call them open sets, such that maybe I should write a tiny bit smaller. So there are three things. A, the entire set is an element of the topology. I'll write these just in a row. B, the empty set, that is the set with nothing in it, is an element of the topology. And C, or actually I should be maybe a little bit, let me keep it like this. Or like this. C, any union of sets, or of, I'll even say of elements of tau is in tau. And then finally D, any finite intersection of elements in tau is in tau. So I wrote C and D in the kind of long form way of saying it. It really can be written a lot shorter if you want. So the idea here is just, and this is maybe a very, it seems very abstract at first. A topology, it's just a collection of subsets of a set. We'll call them open sets. Just a name. We're just naming them that. And to be a topology, these so-called open sets have to satisfy some nice things. This collection of subsets has to contain the whole space, the empty set. So it's got to have everything and nothing. And then anytime you start putting stuff together that's in there, then you get another thing that's in there. And anytime you start intersecting things that are in there, at least finitely many of them, you stay in there. So it's closed under finite intersections and arbitrary unions. That's how people like to say this. So just in case you've forgotten what unions are, the union of two sets is just everything in both of them, right? While the intersection is everything that's in both of them, and the union is everything from both of them. Get what I'm saying, right? Union, throw them together. You got two different bags of stuff, dump them in one bag. Intersection, what's in common between the two different bags? Okay, there you go. So this is topology, and a topological space is a pair, just an ordered pair of a set and a topology on it. So that's where X is a set. And tau is a topology on X. All right, so nothing hard here. It just is probably a lot more abstract than maybe you've seen before. All we're doing is we're grabbing a set, grabbing pieces from it, and those pieces have to fit together nice. We have to have enough of them. Sorry for the baby crying in the background, if we're picking that up. My son's been a little bit fussy today. We'll see if he keeps up. If he does, maybe I'll record the rest of this later. We'll see. I think he's calming down. Shout out to my beautiful wife for taking care of him while I'm lecturing in the evenings. But anyway, so this is topology and a topological space. Maybe I've zoomed in a little bit too much there. So the kind of idea here to think, and this will inform us perfectly, is your classic most familiar topological space, which is R2, I would say. I think it's probably the thing that you're most familiar of thinking about these types of things with. It's strangely more so even than R. This is just probably because we draw on paper all of the time. So if we want to look at some open sets, a good way of thinking about open sets and topologies in general is to look at the usual topology on the real numbers. So I know that sounds not very helpful. After all, what is the usual topology? And I will give you a tiny kind of taste of what the big deal is shortly. I'm going to put this all in. Actually, I won't put it in a box. That looks messier when I do. But the regular old topology on R2 just consists of nice, and I'll use this sort of like a dashy line to say everything in here except the edges, right? So this kind of thing. This would be like an open set. So all the stuff that's in here except for the edges, something like this is a open set. Classic, or actually here, let's even take it just slightly. We're gonna go back to R2, but let me just say that maybe just for a quick just for intuition. Easy examples are the topology on R. So on the real numbers, you can think of R has open sets of the form AB, and I should really just say of the form unions of these guys, if you're getting what I mean. So these nice kinds of well, what I should say is it has a topology generated by open sets of that form according to these rules. But open intervals, right? Take open intervals and put them together, and let's actually even just talk about that. So open sets, I'll say generated by intervals AB, not including the endpoints. So just to get an intuition, the empty interval would be from A to A for any choice of number A, right? From, like the interval from 0 to 0, not including 0. Oh, okay, not including either of the endpoints, so there's nothing in there. That's the empty set. Okay, then we could have the whole thing, right? I mean, this, if we let A or B be like infinities or negative infinities, right? Just to imagine, you write that interval all of the time in algebra 1. And then you could look at intervals like the open interval from 0 to 1, open interval from 0 to 2. Take the union of those two guys, and that would be another open interval. Or take the open interval from 0 to 2 and the open interval from 0 to 1. Take an intersection, you'll get the open interval from 0 to 1. And that's still in the topology, right? So these guys, what you'll end up getting is you'll get unions of open intervals for the open sets. And this is very familiar, but there's not too much to think about there that's all that interesting for us right now. Not that the real numbers aren't interesting. The more informative thing is to look at R2, and this is what I was starting to draw earlier. Similarly to how we deal with open and closed intervals in R, we can look at open and closed kind of little chunks of. Oh, here's what. Yeah, this will be a way better way to do it. So I'll just turn down the opacity and I'll kind of fill in like that. That's much nicer looking. Okay, so you can look at little chunks without the edges in R2. Pick a point, say. I'll even use a different color right here. And this is how your book starts to go about it. So it'll start by saying that you can look at neighborhoods of points, right? So they'll say, here's a point, let's call this P, and we could look at a neighborhood of P, and they start developing a neighborhood by talking about a disk. So the disk about P of radius R, which they denote by dPr, uncreatively, is just this nice, I want to make sure I slow that opacity down, just this nice circle of radius r about that point right there. So that's the disk of radius p about r. Some people like to do the double lines on the disk there instead of single. Your book does single lines, so we'll stick with it. Kind of like how people do the blackboard lettering for C. And then they describe after this, they describe a neighborhood of P, which is just any set containing a disk about P. And then they'll say like, okay, so you got a neighborhood N. And a neighborhood N would be anything that contains a disk containing P. And really, you can define all of this much more generally if you so desire. And I think that there's no real reason to avoid doing it in the first place, just because it's so straightforward. So you can build a topology on R2 just by taking the regular old topology on R and generating it as usual from that, taking open intervals, but products of open intervals now, little open boxes and stuff, right? And just building it out of there. But we're not gonna do any of this formalism of doing it like that. We're just gonna take this neighborhood definition because it's nice and easy. But instead of doing some of the slightly more messy things, like they give you the definition of a topological space, but just for the complex numbers, which sort of seems silly. It's like, if we're gonna define a topological space, why do it just for one? Why not do it for everything? Why not make our lives nice? So we'll have disks. Neighborhoods are sets containing disks about a neighborhood of a point P is a set containing a point P inside of a disk contained within that set. And then we can talk about something in my throat there. Then we can talk about the neighborhood definition of an open set, which is what they do. I think it's much less intuitive than just saying you declare certain things to be open sets, and then you just have to have them satisfy this to be open sets in the usual way. But in terms of the neighborhood definition, notice that a neighborhood of a point being a set containing a disk about P, well, if you want to talk about an open set like this guy, notice pick any arbitrary point in there. And if we zoom in a little bit, just for ease, let's pick any random old point in here. Notice, hey, I can always find a neighborhood about that point, right? No matter what point I pick, if I zoom in close enough, I can always get like a little neighborhood about it, right? Or a little disk about it. And so they'll say a set is open if every point in it, if every point in the set, if the set is a neighborhood of every point in it, i.e., so if every point in the set has a little disk about it. So that's how they go about it in your textbook. I prefer just to look at topological spaces generally, and then proceed from there. So we can describe neighborhoods just very easily by in general, not just in the case of this specific case of C. So we can do this very generally by saying that so we'll say given a topological space, and I'll write it still as a pair. Most of the time, people just take the topology implicitly. So if we take a point P in X, and we have a topological space X tau, a set N contained in X, notice it doesn't have to be a member of the topology, is said to be a neighborhood, which people often abbreviate by NHBD, though in the definition I should write it all the way out. A neighborhood of P if there exists O, an open set in, so meaning in tau, such that P is in O, and that's contained in N. Okay, so that coincides with this definition here. We're just noticing that essentially the nice building block for our open sets in R2 or in C, if we're considering C to be R2 with its topology, depending on what we're looking at C as, right? If we're looking at C as a field, or are we looking at the vector space structure on C, doesn't really change what the thing is in terms of all the different things we can do. But just as a topological space, C and R2 are the same thing. They differ in other ways, depending on what structure you choose to realize on them, and in what context you're in. So in terms of what's going on there, we're just saying, hey, some of the most basic open sets, indeed the basic open sets, are disks. And so we might as well just use that, since if we used anything else, we could still get down to the disk definition. And so this is how we end up with our topologies and our neighborhoods and all this stuff. And what I wanted to go one more piece from here in the pure abstract world is to say, okay, so we've got a topology. Notice there's a nice piece we can do here, and this is the definition. And I'm just going to try to front load all the abstract stuff right here. So this is the definition of a neighborhood. Okay, and we're going to do one more definition down here. We'll call this the subspace topology, or the relative topology, people like to call it sometimes. So given a topological space X tau and a subset, we'll just call this Y, so capital Y, contained in X, the subspace topology on Y, induced by X, you might say, is the topology we'll call this I don't know, nu, given by it consists of all elements we'll call we'll just write it like this: O intersect Y such that O is in tau. So this renders Y nu a topological space, and we should prove this, i.e. Y nu is a top space. So that's the nice thing there. It's basically an easy picture if you think about it. So you've got a topological space X up here. You've got a Y contained in X, and so this gives rise to I may be writing this weird. This comes well, I should say I'll just do like a squiggly arrow right here, a squiggly arrow to make it not look like I'm trying to write something I'm not. So there's a tau, the topology on X, and what we're just doing is that we've got some elements O in tau, right? Or here, I'll even write it like this. So I've got tau, and I've got elements, say like element O in tau. And I'm going to write, well, what I'm trying to avoid doing, I just won't. I'm trying to avoid writing the in symbol backwards, even though it's kind of clear at what it means, just because I don't want it to look like a nightmarish mess here. But this is just the in symbol. I'm writing it backwards because I want to write it backwards. So accept that. And then what we're doing is we're just forming a new topology by instead taking y's and intersecting them with o's. And so this piece gets plugged in here, right? See, like the intersection, the inclusion component kind of just carries it through. See what I'm saying? Like you've maybe got your whole space here, and then you've got some nice open set inside of it, right? And then you grab your little chunk of your space here. This is like Y, right? So maybe in this picture we've got X, we've got O, and then we've got, what was I using for that color? There we go. We've got our Y, and then notice that what you get out of that little intersection piece right in here, this guy is Y intersect O. So it's just the cheapest way to borrow a topology from a bigger space down to a smaller space. That is to take a topology from something big and push it down onto the chunks, right? And so this is just like the cheapest and easiest way to do it. Just say, I'm not even going to make a new one. I'll just like keep the old one basically. And you're like, but you don't have all of it. And you're like, we'll just work with what we got. That's what we're doing right here. We're just keeping the pieces that get carried over. So instead of demanding that we have the whole open set contained in Y, we'll just say, good enough. We'll work with what we got. We'll take that little piece there. So this is topological spaces, subspaces, topologies, neighborhoods, etc. And this will let us say certain things a lot less, in much less cumbersome ways than your book wants to do. So I'm going to pop a new layer on here and continue a little bit more. Let me zoom in a tiny bit further there. Nice. So your book likes to give everything relative just to C, but there's no particularly big reason we have to. That's kind of my big drive of this entire thing right here. And so I'm going to define continuity very abstractly. So a function, or I'll even say it like this. I'll say given topological spaces, and I'll now just write x and y. I won't reference the topologies explicitly. That is, I could like write like x tau y nu or something like that, but we don't really need to. We'll just assume that they have topologies. We'll only bring up the name of the topology when needed, right? So we'll just abuse notation slightly, and this is very common, and just refer to the entire topological space by the set. Even though there may be many topologies you could put on a set, we're just saying relative to the one you did put on there, not or whichever one you want to put on there. Given two topological spaces, x and y, we say that a function f from x to y, is it takes things in x and it sends them to y, is continuous if well, okay, here I'll do it. I'll say if f inverse of O, or I'll even write, I will write the topologies just to make it very nice. Sorry, I'm waffling on that. So given, I'll say x tau, and y nu, we say that a function f from x to y is continuous if f inverse of O is in tau whenever O is in nu. That is if the pre-image of every open set is open. Ah, okay. Notice we've defined continuity so generally that we don't have to talk about anything other than topology. Continuity is a purely topological concept. No extra fancy anything necessary. The nice thing about spaces like C, the complex plane, the real numbers, all sorts of other things that you will deal with in your mathematical career, the nice thing about them is that the topological data happens to align with other data. Or said a different way, the topology happens to be generated by some nice sort of additional structure on the space. And this is what we usually get when we talk about the epsilon delta definition of limits. That is the topology on R, on R2, on Rn, on C, on Cn, all these different guys. Is generated by a norm. I mean, really, it's generated even by inner product, but for all intents and purposes, the way you see it normally defined is a little different. So, I should re-mention something. This is a silly little piece. This is a tiny thing. So I'll write this in a different color. So while we did the disk thing right here, this disk about a point with radius r, people will also talk about a deleted neighborhood or a punctured disk. It is exactly what it sounds like. So if the disk is is everything except for that point in the middle, right? If the disk is everything including that point in the middle, then the punctured neighborhood is everything but that point in the middle. Drawn perhaps slightly more intuitively because I guess I have the technology. So disk, punctured disk, right? Everything including the middle, punctured, nothing in the middle, right? Punctured neighborhood, everything except perhaps that point, right? Okay, so I'm gonna. It's exactly what it sounds like, so it's almost not worth its own definition. Oh, all right. So one of the ways they like to do this in your textbook is instead of defining continuity in this much easier way that only really utilizes the idea of a topology, we instead go about it in the epsilon delta way, which is better to work with. So let f, and we'll say, I'll write it like this. F's defined on some subset A of C, right? To C. And we'll say where A contains a deleted neighborhood of some point z naught. So let's say that this is a function. We say f is continuous at, well, I should maybe spell it out if it's the definition, at z naught. And, well, maybe I should say, instead of this, let me take it in the roundabout way they like to do. F has, they say has, the limit a as z approaches z naught, and we write lim z goes to z naught f of z equals a, limit a as z goes to z naught, and write it like this. If for all epsilon greater than 0, all real numbers epsilon greater than 0, there exists another real number delta greater than 0, such that, and this is where people struggle with things, such that for all z in a disk about z naught of radius r, and maybe I should, well, it's always weird when they say this part too. You don't have to have this z not equal to z naught, and norm z minus z naught less than delta, then f of z minus a less than epsilon. So this is the very fancy way of going about defining a limit here. This is the epsilon delta way. We don't have to do this all in terms of these fancy punctured disks and stuff. I think it can make it just feel a little bit weirder. What we're just going to say is that, hey, your function has to be defined on a domain such that these things even make sense to talk about, right? We're just going to talk about, and they even make a statement in here when they say this. They say, hey, it's not necessary to define f on a whole deleted neighborhood to have a valid theory of limits, but we'll just do it for the sake of simplicity. We don't need to do it like this for simplicity. I don't really think it makes it that much simpler. However, if you find it helpful, then I just realized that delta there looks a little bit like an F. That is actually a delta. That is not an F. If you find this helpful, then by all means, go ahead and use it. But really, I think this seems so much more verbose relative to what they are actually wanting to say. All they're trying to say is that for if you have things that are close to your point, let's call this z naught. Let me switch to a different color so I don't overwhelm this definition, right? So we've got our region A. This is sitting inside of a copy of C here. We're going over to C over here. I'll even just kind of draw these guys like regular old planes, you know. And the thing that's mapping us over there is F. That's just this function is taking A and sending it all the way over to the other copy of C. It's a function between A to the other copy of the complex plane. Okay, good to go. All that we're saying is that, hey, if you have a given point, doesn't have to actually be included in A, but you should at least have the stuff nearby, at least in terms of how they define it. You don't actually have to have the stuff nearby, but we can just do this. We'll do it their way. Now, if you've got stuff nearby, basically all you have to do is if this is, we'll call this Z naught, and then over here we'll say that this is f of Z naught, right? This little point right there. So if we grab as small of a ball as you want around here, well, then you're always able to grab a small ball around this guy such that everything gets mapped into that small ball. That is, the preimage of this contains an open set. So maybe it's, like a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and then it's also got some stuff over here that gets mapped into there. And so there's just this big messy, whole bunch of junk that gets mapped in. What I'm trying to show is that at the end of the day, what we're going to get is we're going to get the same definition of continuity as what we started with that I thought was much simpler. And what I'm trying to, made that Z naught much harder to see instead of easier. So there's Z naught, this point. Notice that if we have some messy thing in the pre-image of this this guy over here, we're taking this set and we're looking at what got sent to it. Notice if we've got as messy of a weird thing as we want over there, I still can always grab myself a little ball inside of that thing, right? Oh, it's almost like the pre-image of an open set about the image of a point contains an open set about that point, right? Like the pre-image of an open set is open. Oh, just like this other definition. But this is just describing a limit right there. And what they then go on to do in your textbook is they show that limits are unique if they exist using the triangle inequality. That's it's overkill. You don't need to have the triangle inequality or all of these norms, these magnitudes, all of this sort of stuff. Not necessary. All you need to get unique limits is you have to have a Hausdorff space, which we won't talk about here, but we've already basically described kind of what a Hausdorff space is. It's just a space where any 2 points can be separated by distinct open sets. There are disjoint neighborhoods of any 2 distinct points. As long as you can put any 2 distinguishable 2 points that are different from each other, you can put them in 2 different open sets that don't intersect each other. That's all you need to get unique limits, and I won't prove that here. And they have a nice short proof using the triangle inequality, which you should know. It's a good proof, but we don't need it right here. So I'll pull like some nice little theorems over from your book just to bring a little bit more of that in here. So I'll need to there we go. Okay, so I'm going to bring a few theorems right now on in, and we'll just kind of talk about them really quick. So they go show that if you have limits, they're unique. If you take the limit of a sum, provided both limits exist, then the limit of the sum is the sum of the limits. The limit of a product is the product of the limits. The limit of a quotient is the quotient of the limits, provided that even makes sense to say. That is, provided that the limit of the function on the bottom is non-zero. So this is just not really that interesting to us. These things are routine to verify. You should go through and look at the proofs on how they verify them, since if you don't feel super confident in your epsilon delta proofs. I think I might have one of those in the homework. I'm not. If I don't, then I will maybe give extra credit for one of those. I'll see if I don't, I'll send an announcement. But then they finally go on to what we're looking for. And so using all of the limit business, we recover what we were able to very easily talk about before. So we're going to say, okay, let's start with an open set in the complex plane and some function from that open set to the complex plane. We'll say that f is continuous at a point in its domain if and only if the limit as z goes to z naught of f of z is z naught, f of z naught. So that is continuous functions. You can think of preserve convergence, maybe. So as z goes to z naught, then f of z goes to f of z naught, right? And they'll say this again in a slightly different way later with actually talking about sequences instead of just limits like this. But notice, as we were saying just a minute ago, there's nothing fancier here than what we were talking about, which is just that, hey, the pre-image of a point, right? So they first describe what it means to have a limit, and then they later jump on it and say, hey, we're continuous if and only if the the limit is equal to the evaluation of the point, right? So f of z naught, right? This guy right here. Did I really write that like that? If I did, I apologize. I think I must not have been thinking clearly. This f of z naught, that should be f of z naught, not f sub z naught. Sorry. Let me write that much better because that is bothering me that I wrote it like that. I do apologize if I did that. Okay, yeah, I must have written it like that. So that's that point in there is f of z naught, not f sub z naught. That would be a silly thing. Anyway, my bad. So yeah, so that's what we've got sitting right there. Wow, what a mess now I've made. All the same. Notice that this definition of limits says that for every epsilon radius ball, so here we've got a ball of radius like epsilon, the pre-image of it, you have to be able to get within some delta, right? So here we got this point, and so this is a delta radius ball. There has to be some delta radius ball such that everything in there gets mapped to in here. It doesn't have to be equal to the entire ball, but everything from in there gets mapped to in here. That is, no matter how weird and disjointed the pre-image of the set is, the point in the middle of it, this epsilon radius ball about f of z naught, the point in the middle of its pre-image, the point in this guy, it gets mapped in the pre-image to something that is inside of the set. That is, you can the pre-image is a neighborhood of that point, right? It's got an open disk about it. So notice we could have skipped all of the fanciness here and just stuck with that original pre-image of open sets is open. It's in many ways much nicer to work with than I think than the other one, although the other one is useful, the epsilon delta, because it is not necessarily as easy to do calculations with the pre-image of every open set is open. So this is how your book does continuity right there. And then we get a whole slew of theorems about continuous functions. And these guys we are all probably pretty familiar with. Or at least have seen some incarnation of in regular old calculus. So, for example, if the limit as z goes to z naught of f of z is a, and h is a function defined on a neighborhood of a and is continuous at a, then the limit as z goes to z naught of h of f of z is h of a. That is, limits commute with, you can take the limit inside of this continuous function, provided that function is continuous at the limit of the thing, or at the limiting value of what's inside of it, right? So then if f is a continuous function on an open set and h is continuous on the image of a under f, then the composite function, the composition h composed with f, is continuous on all of a. This is just the global version of part 1, right? So part 1 is continuous at a point a. Part 2 is continuous on an entire subset A, and it's just the subset-wise version of the first one. Nothing fancy there. We should all know these things. They give nice epsilonics, epsilon delta proofs that are boring but nice. In the book, we will get some more practice with those, but I prefer to save that for things that are actually related to complex analysis to the greatest extent possible, so we can get through this otherwise ridiculously lengthy section. All right, then they get into talking about sequences. A sequence is a set of points indexed by the natural numbers, or they don't really have to be indexed by the naturals. We could index them by something else, but we'll index them always by the naturals. So like z1, z2, z3, so on, just some sequence of points. So we'll say a sequence zn, and I'll just write it in parentheses. This is z2, z3, z4, on and on and on forever, converges to a point z naught. This definition, this is the definition of convergence for a sequence right here. So if and only if, this is like what it means to converge. If for every epsilon greater than 0, and so let's use this upside down a to mean for all epsilon greater than 0. This upside down a means for all. So if and only if for all epsilon greater than 0, there exists a natural number n greater than 0, such that n greater than or equal to big N implies that z n minus z0 less than epsilon. And I wish they wouldn't use 0 here, because it makes you sort of feel like the sequence should start at 0. Maybe we could use like a point z star. I don't know. But it's how they write it in your book. Basically, all this says is that, okay, does a sequence converge to a point? Yeah, what that means is if after some duration of initial things that maybe are farther away from a given value from that point, then after that everything is within it. So you've got your z naught right here, and then you've got your sequence doing other stuff. And it's just going to go right on up to it. And so it says, hey, if you pick some epsilon, and you draw yourself a little epsilon ball about z naught, then for all of the things in your sequence, all these points, everything except for these initial finite number of first ones, all lie inside of that ball. And so this is the nice epsilon notion of convergence of a sequence. And so limits of sequences have nice properties as the same kind of properties as limits of functions. And indeed, you can end up defining these things in terms of each other. So that is the limit of a sum of sequences, provided they exist. The limits of each exist is the sum of the limits. The limit of a product of sequences, provided both sequences limits exist, is the product of the limits of those sequences. And same with quotients, provided the denominator makes sense. That is, provided it's not zero. The thing that maybe you might not have encountered, I think you maybe have encountered, is the definition of a Cauchy sequence. So not to be confused with a Cauchy, as people like to say, if they are confused and haven't had to pronounce it out loud. So a sequence, we'll call this Z sub n, is a Cauchy sequence if for every, or I'll even use that same symbol, if for all epsilon greater than 0, there exists an integer n, I'll even say greater than 0, such that Zn minus Zm, little m's, less than epsilon, whenever both little and big, or little n and m are greater than or equal to big N. So Cauchy sequences, notice, it looks almost like the definition of like a convergent sequence. So this is up here. This is convergence for a sequence. This looks almost like the same definition, but notice a Cauchy sequence, it doesn't talk about what it converges to or if it converges. All it's saying is, hey, we've got a sequence, and we're going to say it's a Cauchy sequence if everything eventually gets close. That is, we're not saying what it gets close to, but just the terms of the sequence get close. So think about stuff like, the kind of idea to think of in your head here is that like, oh, like we're really far away and then we're getting, smaller and smaller, right? Like, oh, we're getting really close, right? As time is, like, we're getting compressed together. And does this actually converge to something? Like, it's getting smaller. Yeah, it seems like it should. And indeed, this is one of the nice things about the real number system. And indeed, same about the complex numbers as well. This is called completeness. So, and I should maybe, they don't define this with like a full-on definition in there. They just say it. So completeness means that every Cauchy sequence has a limit. Every Cauchy sequence converges. And this is a nice property of real numbers, since C is, the topology of C is just the topology of two copies of the reals, right, of R2. And since R is complete, it is very reasonable to suspect that C is complete as well, and it turns out to be the case. So a great fact, it's a technical point, and we will prove it, I think, in Chapter 3. A great fact is that C is complete, and the limit of every Cauchy sequence, or every Cauchy sequence has a limit. I was going to say the limit of every Cauchy sequence belongs to C. So, it's great. We will also, here's one. I wonder if I asked you guys to prove this. I think I might have. Yeah, if I haven't, then I will. Continuity is equivalent to a function to preserving the convergence of sequences. So if you've got Zn goes to Z naught, right? If some sequence of points converges, then f of zn converges to f of z naught. This is what continuity means. It preserves all convergent sequences. I will not actually go through that right now. I'm going to erase it because I'm going to ask you to prove that if I haven't yet. And if I didn't ask it in the homework, then I will probably ask that for extra credit. Anyways, so we've talked kind of a lot about various different open sets and pieces here. I think we're about halfway through this nightmarishly long section. Next, we'll go into a medium divergence about closed sets, and it'll mirror exactly what we did at the beginning with open sets. We'll try to avoid some of the messy things that they do here and keep it clean and easy. And then we'll talk a little bit about path connectedness, compactness, and stereographic projections, compactifications of C. Kind of a large number of things to cover in a single chapter, but we will, or section of a chapter, but we will do it beginning next time. I think we are slightly over, actually. Yeah, maybe we'll actually push. Well, let me look at the homework first and see. I don't know. I want to make sure that I'm giving everyone enough time for the homework, given how far we got today. I'll look it over. If you have any particular inclination and if it would be helpful, just shoot me an email and I'm fine to accommodate you. I might extend the deadline on that maybe till like Monday instead. We'll see. But I've already gone over by about 4 minutes. Oh boy, actually 15 minutes. My bad. So I will call this for tonight, and just shoot me an email if you have a question. I am nearly done grading your homeworks. It should be finished up later tonight, and cool. I hope you have a good one. Bye. I'll stay in the Twitch stream for a moment here in case anyone has any questions. All right, I don't think I'm seeing anything in the chat. I will check my email frequently if you have any questions, so just let me know. All right, cool. Have a great night.